Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 243. This is Carl.
This is Aaron.
Thanks for coming and joining me, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super appreciate that. That's the old starting music. Dan gave me some new music.
Yeah.
I put a poll up. Pretty overwhelmingly people like the new one. I think it's good. Somebody said get rid of the intro saying, but I kind of dig it. I get accused of being a shill of 40K or of GW enough.
Yeah.
The opening of the thing says, I didn't sell out. Oh. I bought in. I was like, oh, I like that.
Oh, if only it was fitting. Oh, wait, it is.
Oh, it is. It is. This episode, we are going to be talking about the Crusade Pariah Nexus book that has come out. Because a couple things became pretty apparent to me that I misunderstood in the way that Games Workshop kind of pushed everything. And one is Crusade in general. Like, I understood roughly how it worked, but I hadn't actually played it. Then I went up to the Tacoma Open and I played in the Tacoma Open, and we played using that book, the Crusade Pariah Nexus book, and a couple of things became readily apparent, which I'll talk about briefly right here. One, Crusade is not that heavy of a lift. Like it felt like it was like, in reading it, you feel like, oh, there's all this recording I have to do, and
well, it's not Necromunda level, right?
It's about Necromunda level to a point. But it's less.
Yeah.
Once you've built your list, you have like a Crusade force, and then you're using units from that list, and the units that you're using are the ones that are experiencing whatever.
Right.
And you can swap guys out or whatnot. But anyway, the point being, it's not as heavy of a lift as I thought it was. And right. Two, this book is not what I thought it was either. Nor is Pariah Nexus, meaning everybody's been after the Pariah Nexus cards.
Right.
Like everybody's trying to chase them down. I just thought this was kind of like, oh, here's the Crusade rules that go with the Pariah Nexus cards. Nope. There's like a whole bunch of different missions in here. If you have this book, you don't even really need the cards.
Right. The cards just make it easy because they're smaller to have on the table, much like the other.
Nope. The cards are effectively the tournament missions.
They're not even the same missions?
They're not the same missions. So we'll talk all about that, and I'll fill you in on that. They're quite different, actually. These are very narrative focused and a little bit different. Now, that's not saying you can't use the Crusade cards. You absolutely can.
Right.
But those are really kind of the current season's tournament cards. It's a fun way to play the game. Like, I don't think it's not a fun way to play the game.
Right.
But you don't have to have those cards to use this book, which is really
is really, really important to know, too, if you're going to get into it.
Yeah, because I saw this before I went to Tacoma. I saw the book in the GW store, and I was like, $60 just for like narrative stuff and maybe Crusade rules around. But I have Crusade rules in the Tyranid one. Vastly different. Like, it's actually super cool what they've done. I'm sold on it. Like, it's really, really different.
Well, it to a small extent, it calls back to Shadows of Brimstone, which we play. We've played before. It's a
silly board game, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's basically a dungeon crawl in the Old West.
Right.
But they're collecting Darkstone.
Yeah. We'll get into all that. Like, we'll get into the details of that.
Jumping ahead.
But basically, I just wanted to kind of set the tone that this book isn't what I thought it was initially.
Right.
It's kind of like, if you want to run narrative games, it sets kind of the tone for those narrative games, and it gives you Crusade rules to use with those that are different than the Crusade rules that came with, what was the set? The
Leviathan?
Leviathan. They're different than that, and they're different than your Crusade rules from your codex, if you have a codex yet. But like the Chaos one has a codex.
Yep.
But they all work together. So it's really kind of pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk when we get to that section. We'll talk about how you can pull different things.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, but until then, just a couple quick announcements before we get started. Our show this episode is sponsored by Michael Verks and Dominic Mauseri. How do we think it was pronounced? Masseri. I think it's pronounced Masseri. I'm sorry, Dominic. I butchered your last name. I'm so sorry, but I don't know how to pronounce that. So we did our best.
We did what we could.
Like our old CEO, Aaron. Like he would try to pronounce the hardest names up there, and I just appreciate that he gave it a go. So hopefully you appreciate that, Dominic. But thank you, Michael and Dominic. We really do appreciate your Patreon support, and we're trying to make it worth it. So also we're a part of the Goonhammer Media Network, so you can check out media.goonhammer.com for more shows and info. And so let's leap right into Elite Choice. Aaron, I'm going to let you go first.
All right.
Then I'm going to go to Shell's, and then I'll come back to mine.
All right. Well, my elite choice this time is Fernando Betancourt for his Ultramarines that he did, which appear to be nicely kit bashed. I mean, I love the spears. I believe those shields are from Necromunda.
They are
the Enforcers.
I think so too. I don't know what the spears are from.
I don't know, but those spears look cool, especially how he painted them because they're red sets off the blue really nicely.
Yeah.
The
red of the handles, I think it's like a leather red, but yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, but it stands out, and
they're also just fantastically painted.
Just very well done.
Yeah. It was funny as you were picking it, we were talking about them, and then you're like, I think that's a Necromunda shield. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that until you pointed it out. It fits so naturally with the unit the way he's got.
Yeah, the way he not only just like the color scheme and how where he put the emblems and the color choices that he used, but like making them dynamic to twist them a little bit, and it looks like they're supposed to be there. It's very well done. Absolutely,
that's a good call out. That's a really good call out. So, yeah, well done, man.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Shell chose Paul Ives and his Dark Angels, and I believe he just posted more of them like today too, as we're recording this. But her initial choice was, it looks like a Terminator captain and a Terminator. They look so good. They look so good. Shell was immediately drawn to the weathering on them. We haven't really weathered our stuff very much. So when she's seeing like, oh yeah, but weathering adds yet another, I think, legitimate capacity to the model, right? It makes it look a little more realistic.
It's the painting you do after you're done painting.
Yeah. Which is why I don't do it.
Which is my problem with it as well.
Because I get a little nervous at that point that I'm going to screw it up. I should just dive into it and do it, to be honest with you.
So I agree with your stance. I'm really nervous about doing it. It will be a long time before I do it. But the things I've heard about
I just took a weathering masterclass with Mr. Justin.
Is that if you, quote, mess it up, you just make it more weathered.
I don't agree, though, because you can over-weather. You don't want to over-weather.
These are reasons why I just don't.
It's like blood too. Like I feel like you can do too much blood, right? And so I'm always a little hesitant about it.
There was a picture in a video game that they overdid the blood. It was, it was comically so. Anyway,
all right. Next up is mine, and here's where it may sound like a bit of nepotism.
Oh,
I picked Shell and her. She's not in the room, by the way, and she doesn't listen to the show, so
she'll never know.
I picked Shell and her 2 Venom crawlers, and the reason I picked these, now, to be fair, I did some of the work on them. I did like the airbrushing work, but she did like all the detail work, all the edging. It was really funny to come home and see her at the paint table just painting away. Like that's she's awesome. Done this, she's done the Helldrake. The Helldrake got help her because like I told her flat out, I said, I'm not doing the edging on Helldrake. You got to do it. And she spent days doing it. I mean, and she actually likes it. Like she doesn't mind it at all. She finds it very relaxing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I have to applaud her level of commitment to this, and
she really dove in with both feet.
There's a couple things I had to do to it. Like she needed help understanding how to make the bases. We're now stepping into airbrushing after coming back from Nova, which I'll talk about a little bit. and spending time with Kat and Caleb and Dan Osborne and a few other guys, like Shell's ready to take that leap to the next part of doing the airbrushing stuff. And so we'll start with some basics and then we'll work our way up.
That just means we need another Airbrush 101 here.
Yeah.
It's be like the fourth or fifth one.
We'll do that up at Sky's place or something.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So she did a great job on these Venom crawlers. I couldn't be more excited about the fact that she's super getting into it, because this was one of the things that with her Eldar, she immediately did not like painting like large batches of guys. But now I think she feels like, well, look, I accomplished this. And,
the momentum has started.
Yeah, she goes and finishes it, and she takes it and she puts it on the shelf with all her other stuff, and she steps back and looks at it, and I'm like, yep, that's the feeling right there. So,
well, and this is also an army that she got into from the lore side first.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Because I remember when she read the
Night Lord series,
Night Lord series, it got me to read the Night Lord series because the way she was talking, you guys were talking about it. Yeah, I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome, and
guess what?
It is awesome.
It is awesome.
It's very well done.
So that's our elite choice for this go around. Let's just leap right into hobby progress, and I'll go ahead and go first, sure, because I haven't done much.
What?
I know I've missed my hobby progress challenge month of August
because shame.
I started a new job, and
Oh, sure.
I had to ramp up for a day.
Man, I don't know how people with jobs do this stuff.
I'll do it. I worked on Shell stuff a bit.
So now you're taking, not only did you mention her as your elite choice, you're taking the credit
for some of it. You worked on. For some of it. I also worked on my Sisters of Battle a little bit, struggling through the inner white of their cloaks, which is just crushing me. And then I did a bunch of Table War charity stuff. Yes, so Shell and I both did that. So I'll talk about that. Yeah. So I might as well talk about that now. Yeah. We went to Nova Open. We went there specifically to help out Todd of Table War Charities. I am on the board for Table War Charities. So for those who don't know, Table War Charities is, and I've got this speech down because I must set it up. Table War Charities is an autism advocacy charity. What that means is, certainly here in the U.S., when kids go to school and they have autism, a couple things happen. One, the schools cannot be the most helpful sometimes. In particular, my wife, who's a teacher, has sat on a side of the table where she's told, do not say certain things, do not offer certain things by the administration. Meanwhile, the parents are kind of lost. Like they're a couple things. They're coming to grips with one, their child has some struggles ahead of them. And two, how do they get help for this? And they're kind of forced to find that out on their own. What we do is we provide tools for them to help support the parents to understand, like, here's what you can do, here's what you can ask for, those kinds of things. And then in the most extreme cases, we will send in mediators between the school and the parents in a very non-confrontational way. The mediator will help you understand, like, here's what I know what the school can do. So here's what we're going to ask for, very nicely, but you don't want to build this like adversarial relationship, right? So that's what we did. So we went to Nova Open specifically to support Todd with that. Todd was playing in the tournament, which, by the way, was 9 games over 3 days.
Wow.
No, thank you. And then Shell and I, for the most part, worked the booth. Now, I went off and talked to a couple people and had a couple industry insider kind of things going on. But beyond that, there was one day where Shell worked the majority of the day working the booth, and she did an awesome job. And we had people coming up. We had 3 great prizes. We had 4, all 4 of the assassins painted up as one squad.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which goes pretty well with the new Imperial Agents thing that just came out.
Yep.
We had Justin Hill's signed book, I think it was Shadow of the Eighth, I believe was the name of the title of the book. It was signed. It's a Minka-esque book, and we had 2 of the characters from the book painted up by Ted Lidgard.
Oh.
And they went along with the book, so that was kind of cool. And then we had a Harder and Steenbeck Infinity Airbrush that we were doing as well. We raised quite a bit of money. People are very generous.
Oh, that's amazing.
Very, it's shocking how many people come up to you and they're like, oh, I have a brother, a nephew, a cousin, a sister, me who is autistic and could have used support. So
no, it's incredible. So my son is autistic. And it's amazing how much you don't know what to ask for until you get hints and start, digging into it. So, I mean, it's a great charity and a great cause.
Yeah. Other than that, at Nova Open, I mean, I got to hang out with a bunch of friends, hung out with Dan and Campbell just a little bit, watch their live recording of their podcast, which was fun as they wore goofy hats and stuff. And, went out to dinners with people that we knew, great painters, God, the painting competition there is just insane. Like the Golden Demon is cool.
Yeah.
Like I really like it. I think there's the Crystal Brush, I believe is the one they're doing still.
I don't know.
I think that's the title of it. I could be mistaken, but the thing I liked about it was it wasn't just Games Workshop product. Like I'm a big GW fan and I'm a big 40K fanboy and
right.
And I love all that stuff, but I got to see models I've never seen before and seeing compilations and creations I'd never seen. And it was really, really fascinating. I mean, there was also a bunch of GW stuff in there that looked fantastic too, but it's cool when it was something I'd never seen,
Yeah.
So really enjoyed looking at that. I just had the best time. Shell had a great time. Appreciate the organizers of the event. Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. Spent a bunch of time with Dave Taylor. Jeff.
Jeff made it out. That was
Jeff
awesome.
came down. He spent one night there. And he and I got to spend a bunch of time just talking and stuff. Shell and he and I played a board game and just kind of chatted. And it was great. Hadn't seen him in maybe 4 or 5 years at this point. I mean, we talk, we chat with each other occasionally, but we made a commitment that we're going to get together and paint over Zoom with each other every 2 weeks or so. So,
oh, that's great. That'll be good.
Yeah. So this coming Friday, I'm going to do some painting with Jeff.
Nice.
I don't know if I'll put that online. I'll check with Jeff, see if he wants to do that. But I think not. I think for this, it's just he and I just talking to each other.
Yeah.
So I also played a game of 40K against Dave Taylor, which is great. I've known Dave for many years. We've never played a game of 40K. We've played some other games together, but never played a game of 40K. We played a game of 40K. He brought his Leagues of Votan. I'll talk about that in games played. What have you been doing hobby-wise?
I did my Hobby Progress Challenge and completed it. Barely.
Hey, barely's barely.
Barely still
complete. C's get degrees, buddy. as Campbell said to me earlier.
I'm painting Leagues of Votan, and I painted the 3 hover trikes.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
If you said vehicle, and I'm like, this is the closest thing I've got assembled.
Vehicles.
It'll work. And they came out all right. This picture makes them look a lot better. I know you haven't seen it. I'll show you after.
Yeah.
Makes them look probably better than they actually look. But yeah, I'm happier now looking at them than I was when I took the picture.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Came out all right.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You don't have the Hecaton.
I do.
It wasn't assembled.
It's in box. I have 2. I think I only have 1 of the Satars, the smaller ones as well. Mm-hmm. They're not assembled. They're just sitting there in the box.
All right.
So
you
eventually
get those assembled. That thing is pretty badass. The Hecaton thing.
Is it?
Yeah. It has a pretty good weapon.
Cool. So,
which I'll talk about next. So that's what you've been doing?
That's all I've done.
That's great.
Work this last month has been crazy.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's weird. But I got it done.
Your boss is a slave driver.
He is. Well,
I wonder why. We're about to find out. So let's move on to games played really quick. I just mentioned I played a game against Dave Taylor at Nova Open. I know he's listening to this because he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be curious to see how you talk about this game," because he's probably talked about it tonight on his live show. So yeah, I recently played a game against Josh. Recently, being a couple months ago, of a Adeptus Titanicus. And it went so poorly for me. I was like, I'm going to quit dice games. And then I went on like this streak of wins where like my dice were super hot for a while. And then I lost the game and now I'm back to my 50-50. So Dave had one of those days. I think he posted on our group, this is the worst game I've ever played. Like technically, like his dice were so bad. It had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with his strategies. It had nothing to do with any of that. His dice just completely failed him. And to top all that off, my dice were so freaking hot, both on saves and in one particular instance I'll talk about in a second. So Dave was playing his Leagues of Votann in that he had one of the Sagittar?
I think they're Sagittars.
And Hecaton. He had a big Hecaton, and then he had, I can't keep them all straight, even though we just did a show force on him. He had several units of guys with a couple with medics and one with a call and all this stuff. Which every time Dave has an Australian accent, so every time he says call, I hear Carl. And so anyway,
everybody should name their call Carl. And
we all set up. The game starts. I of course win the initiative. My Vindicator rolls up, which I paid for. Just want to be clear about that. My Vindicator rolls up, fires at his Hecaton, takes it down to 2 wounds.
Oh, jeez.
In one go. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to split the fire on my... If I were playing super cutthroat, I probably would have been like, and now it takes all the fire from my Forge Fiend.
Right.
But I was like, I think I could take it out. I'm going to take a chance, split fire one ectoplasma cannon from Forge Fiend at it. That'll finish it off. I'll shoot these other 2 units with the other 2. I flub it. Like I missed. The Hecaton's still in place. Okay. I wound something else. Not much else happens that round. Like a little bit of bolter fire. Okay. Next round. So his turn, he's like, okay, the Hecaton fires at your Vindicator. I got to take that thing out. I'm like, okay. He rolls. He goes, okay, this weapon, I hit on, he had given it his grudge. So he's like, oh, that thing's going to go.
Right.
He hits it on a 3. He's supposed to hit it on a 3. He rolls like a 1. And so he's like, okay, I'm command reroll that. He hits it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what's the strength of it? It's like strength 18.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? He goes, yeah. I go, okay, well, yeah, it rolls a 1. Fails the damage.
Wow. It's that big shield in the front.
It must have been. I'm just like, oh, Dave, I'm so sorry. Like, he can't command reroll it because he's already used a command reroll. Yeah. So he proceeds to do a little more ineffective fire with some other stuff. I proceed to save like everything. Like just everything. I think the first time I took a wound was when I caused it myself with a Dark Pact. I destroy the Hecaton Land Raider the next round. I press the advantage. Everything pushes up. I'm shooting at stuff. Stuff is dying. Demon Prince moves up, assaults like his bikes, just destroys the bikes. I mean, it's just not even funny. Like poor Dave. Can't make any save work. It's like round 3. I've moved my Vindicator into the center of the table. I'm like, he'll charge it. I think it's taken a wound. He'll charge it. We'll see how that works out. Meanwhile, Demon Prince continues to wreak havoc in the backfield. I drive a Rhino up. I get my guys out of the Rhino. Like, yeah, I'm holding like a lot of objectives. He goes to charge. He goes to charge the Vindicator. And I'm like, I'll fire Overwatch. I get something like 8 shots on Overwatch. Like it's a D6 plus whatever, plus the number of guys he has because it's blast. I fire Overwatch. I Dark Pact for the hell of it. Fire Overwatch. Out of 8 dice, I roll 6 6s.
Holy cow.
I was more effective on Overwatch
than
in any of my other shooting. That turns into like 12 6s because it's the Dark Pact on it.
Yeah.
pretty much blew that squad away.
Oh man.
Dave goes, "Have you lost the model yet?" And I look over, I go, "No." And like half of his army's on it. I'm like, "Do you want to call it?" He's like, "No, let's push it out." So we pushed it out. I ended up losing. I lost the Vindicator. I think I lost my Rhino. I think I lost some Terminators. One of them might have been to a Dark Pact. I think I lost a Terminator to a Dark Pact, actually, now that I think about it. Like, it just did not go well for him at all. And that leads me to a point, which is Dave is somebody that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Like, he is the nicest gentleman. And he's such a good sport. And yeah, he is, Arya. He's such a good sport. And it feels so bad when a game goes that way. Like I almost wish we had just reset the game after the first round and said, "Hey, wait, let's start over, see what happens." But it just like became progress. I'm like, well, maybe he'll pull, maybe his dice will turn around. You never know.
Right.
Plus, I'm accumulating grudges every time I'm killing stuff. So I'm getting easier to supposedly hit and wound, but it just wasn't like he could not make any rolls work. It was insane. And now I know how Josh feels when he plays me.
I was thinking that now every dwarf in fantasy and 40K has a grudge against you. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was not fair. The gods did not favor Dave that day, or the AI
that controls
the Voton, right? It was brutal.
Yeah,
it was brutal. And so finally, I was like, okay, like he had like 2 squads, partial squads left on the table. Like, why don't we should we call it? Yeah, let's call it. Okay, let's go get a drink. It was like, yeah. But man, and the other part was his guys were so beautiful. Like, dude, you have no idea. Like, there's pictures of him, but it just doesn't do him justice. Like, he is such a fantastic painter, and he's just a machine. He paints so much stuff so fast.
That's awesome.
So good. Like, just the nicest of guys, I wonder if, like, and the problem is when a game like that goes so badly one way, right. I go like, did I make a list that was too strong? I don't know. In hindsight, maybe I should have dropped one of those vehicles and put like another squad of guys or something just to mix it up a little bit. But I don't know. I should mention that was a game at 1,000 points.
1,000 points
it just doesn't feel like it balances well in 40K.
And a single set of dice rolls could pivot the whole game.
Right. I mean, I just feel like 40K starts to really balance at 1,500 up for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
so what you need to do is, I would love to say that my Voton will be painted up and then me and Dave could take you and Shell to town. But,
you really want to put your Voton next to Dave Taylor's? I wouldn't put my army, like I wouldn't, "Hey Dave, I'll paint Space Marines instead of next to you." No, that's okay. I don't know. I think they could. I think yours would look fine.
No. The look wouldn't be there. The fun would be there. And that's what I would be going for.
Yeah, I think it'd be super fun. Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah. We'll see. I don't know if Dave will ever play me again. It felt so bad. It wasn't like, it's not like I was a strategic genius. It's just like 6 out of 8 dice are 6s. That is nuts.
Yeah. That's
required to hit,
know. Yeah. 6 to, but then you had the Dark Pack, which, yeah.
So
wipes a unit. That's crazy.
It was like, I think Dave took a picture of those dice. I'll have to check with him.
Did he do like Justin with my dice, pick them up to check to see if they were loaded?
Nope. They aren't. They're chess X dice. People say they roll terrible. Just dice. Dice are dice. The other game I played was with you and Cheyenne. You and Cheyenne played Necrons in a team game against Shell and myself.
So before we talk about this, I want to go on record that the podcast before this one, the episode before this one, you made a comment that I'd better lose against my boss.
Uh-huh. I did make that comment. How'd that go? It was Cheyenne's fault.
It's totally Cheyenne's fault.
You guys played a good game.
It was fun, but no, I think we pulled it.
I was happy. You needed a win.
Yeah, I suck at this game. I enjoy playing it, but I suck at this game.
Yeah, it was a good game. The heavy destroyers were a problem. It was the first time Shell fought against Necrons. So like when you guys started bringing back stuff,
She was not.
She was like, they get to do what? And I'm like, that's Necrons, but you got to take out the whole squad. The good thing about this game, quite frankly, was the last time we played a team game, Shell and I together, like all of her stuff got wiped out and all of my stuff was still on the table.
Yeah.
And she's like, you told me. I'm like, that should have worked. This time it felt like, we had a good game. I mean, like, yeah, you guys won, but we punched you in the nose quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
and
it was
like your race came up right up the middle of the table, and I was like, oh, thank God. And then like Cheyenne goes, oh, I wouldn't have done that. And then we showed you why you shouldn't.
No, but it was fine because they took a lot of fire,
as they do,
and that's what they're there for. Now, Cheyenne ran his much better than I ran mine.
Yeah. Did you learn some lessons from Cheyenne on how to? Absolutely. Like I noticed he paired like characters with things that made them do other stuff. Like I'm not real well versed in Necron like tactics in terms of, this guy goes with this guy and accomplishes
that
this.
Stuff just doesn't sink in to me. Like
you should talk more to Cheyenne because I think it's important. In particular where he had guys that gave guys feel no pain, just stuff like that. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I should definitely sync up with him before I play another serious game of it. But no, the shielding his units of the Scorpec destroyers with the wraiths. So and then when you engage the wraiths just happily
fall back,
leave, and then the Scorpec charge in. And I'm like, oh, it
was pretty cool
because those have so many attacks.
And wraiths are durable. They just don't put out the damage they used to put out.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But they're still scary. But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was a good game. I'm glad Cheyenne and Campos came up and we played that.
Oh yeah, it's always great to see.
It was fun. It was fun. And Shell got, I think, a lot of. She's so funny because like every time she loses a unit, she gets so upset about it. And I'm like, you're gonna lose units. Like that's how the game. Thank God you're not playing Tyranids or Orcs for that matter,
or phasing out Necrons.
God, that's old history.
Yeah.
So
I still have nightmares.
Yeah. So I've played a couple games in the intervening time. Meaning these two games.
Yeah.
We played some board games and other stuff, but we've played a couple games. I feel like I've gotten a sense of that. I already talked about the games I played at Nova, at the Tacoma Open.
Right.
And I'm going to get Josh on. We're going to go into in-depth discussion about Tacoma Open and
how he walks away with all these medals.
And how I no longer let him pick Airbnbs when we go stay somewhere. And I'll get into all that in a Patreon episode when Josh can spare 30 minutes to record. Yeah. But that's awesome. It was awesome. Nova was fantastic. I will go again, probably again in a Table War Charities capacity. I am looking forward to Adepticon where I don't go in a Table War Charities capacity and instead go in just a game playing capacity. So.
No, I saw Kat was posting some pictures. I think it was a picture of you guys together, and I'm like, I cannot wait till Adepticon.
Yeah. We all got to hang out at the bars, at dinner, that kind of stuff. We just had a really nice time. It was a lovely, lovely time. Kat, Caleb, Dan Osborne, whole crew of folks. All Jake, Dave, the whole painter crew.
Yeah.
It was a good time. The Army Painter group was there. Saw Mike Brandt, talked to him for a little bit. Saw some of the GW people, got to talk to them privately for a little bit about some stuff.
I do have to say that, although Jeff probably doesn't listen, I do have to say that Jeff is the one who makes me want to go to Nova Open.
Yeah.
If I could hang out with him just for an hour.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Yeah. It was really nice to sit and talk.
He's such a good guy to just hang out and talk.
We were very close and time and distance kind of gets in the way of some of those things in life. And so it was great to spend, I took him out to dinner with Todd and Shell and I, and we just had a really nice dinner. We went to a Brazilian barbecue place, which is great because Jeff's wife is vegetarian. and so we took him out and he was just like, I'm eating all this meat.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was pretty funny. So we sent him back home with the meat sweats. And then, there was something else I was going to mention about Nova. Sensei Swag, I hung out with her a little bit. Rachel. Saw Israel Sanchez out there. I'm trying to talk both of them into helping out the charity with the thing. I got an idea for what they could do for us. They seemed open to it, so that was cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was just a great time. We got to talk to so many people. So many people came up and talked to me about the show, talked to me about the charity. You know, we did a Liar's Dice event at night that got way out of hand real fast. Like,
yeah, that's
because we made a lot of money off of that. But
that's awesome.
But it was good. It was good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so let's do this. We're going to take a break. When we come back, let's start diving into the Pariah Nexus a little bit and talk about kind of the backstory of the setting it sets. Give a few critiques on that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think the setting's great. And then in the second part, we'll kind of talk about rules and how Crusade works with it a little bit. And we're not going to go into hyper detail about it. We're going to talk in generalities, but it's very fascinating, I think. I think it's a good book. I'm glad I picked it up. So,
me too.
Spoiler alert. But so we will be right back. All right, and we're back. And now we're going to leap into the Pariah Nexus Crusade book a bit here. So, first off, the Pariah Nexus Crusade book is an add-on of about 120 pages of rules and lore to 40K, 10th edition, focusing really on the Necrons versus kind of everybody versus themselves versus everybody versus other people.
The Necrons are always against.
They're the ones that kick off the problem.
Yeah, which is interesting because one of the things that when I first heard about the Pariah Nexus, it immediately struck in 3rd edition. The Necrons had a psychic null, unit called the Pariahs.
Yeah,
and by far it was my favorite models of that edition.
Yeah.
And it was just really neat, really well done, and then they promptly got rid of that unit.
Yeah.
So
what the book does is about the first half of it is artwork along with lore, kind of setting the stage for where people playing Crusade games in this area would participate. Yep. We'll talk about that lore in just a minute. And then the other half of the book is really specific Crusade rules, a page for photocopying that you can use for tracking your order of battle and and all that. And then explanations on how experience is given out, what things you can requisition, and battle traits and honors and how out of action. It kind of it recovers how Crusade works, and then it moves specifically into the Nephilim War and what the objective there is. So you get battle honors and the main kind of, well, I'll talk about that later. I don't want to overdo it. Okay. So basically it's divided into two sections. You have a lore section, then you have a rules section. It's very much like how we've seen previous campaign books and that
codexes,
kind of thing.
campaign books, even the main rule book, right?
Yeah. Even Forge World Imperial Armor books in the past. So the question I have posed in our notes here is like, why does Pariah Nexus, the Crusade Pariah Nexus, matter? Like, what's its importance in like broader Warhammer 40K?
That's really interesting because in the broader galaxy that is 40K, it doesn't matter. It does.
I don't know.
It does to the Necrons.
The threat it poses.
That's true.
And earlier between the recording, Aaron, you said, well, there's no Tyranids listed here.
Yeah.
Arguably, Tyranids just had
Leviathan. Well, and Tyranids appear
everywhere.
Frankly, much like the Necrons, except the Tyranids are coming from outside and the Necrons are just coming from inside.
So that raises an interesting point. Like in the lore, so let's talk about this in two factors. How does it matter in the lore of 40K? And then how does it matter in the gameplay of 40K? Okay.
Right.
So in the lore of 40K, I would argue it's a fairly large sector that this book covers, but the effect that the Necrons are doing is galaxy wide. Like they are literally trying to encircle the galaxy in these kind of, I mean, we haven't talked about what's going on yet,
right?
But the threat it poses. Let me step back 1 second. So we were talking about Leviathan and how the Tyranids are coming from outside the system, and they're a pretty large threat to the entire galaxy, right?
Correct.
They're here to devour the whole galaxy. If you think about the Necrons and their lore, they predate the Eldar.
Yep.
Right? They are fighting. Well, they have gone to a sleep situation.
Yeah, after they become Necrons
and fought against
destroy the Star Gods.
The Star Gods, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, I've always felt like, okay, well, you have these Necrons and they're kind of waking up and, ooh, scary. You know, I mean, they're these implacable foes.
Well, before they were undead, right?
Well, there's still these implacable foes that kind of, push forward. But I never really felt, until I read this, I never really felt like, oh, they're a real threat to like the entire galaxy. Okay. This book, it almost advances, from my perspective, how far they've woken up.
That's true based on if you didn't read the Necron novels.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I definitely agree. Like,
okay.
If you just, I don't even think the Codex really goes into how much they've woken up. I bet it does more than I'm remembering. But the novels really go into, one, how dilapidated some of them are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two, how with the Silent King coming back, how they're trying to retake their galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all just maggots on their lawn and they're trying to kick us off.
Right.
Right.
So when the story starts off, well, I'm trying not to go down the story path yet until we kind of talk about it, but I can't talk about their impact lore-wise without first saying, so the kind of main threat that they have going on here is, at first it's just called an anomaly.
Right. Is it the Nephilim? I think it's the Nephilim anomaly.
Yeah.
Is what they first referred to it as.
But what it is, and what it's doing, it is mentioned that this is the same kind of all around the galaxy. Like the Necrons are trying to basically encircle the galaxy with these things. And what they do to do this is they're almost making like supercomputers out of planetary bodies and such.
It's unclear, really.
Right.
And it's supposed to be. But
because, and it's unclear, and it's supposed to be because the technology is supposed to be so far beyond what we can comprehend. True. It's nearly magic to us, right?
And because it sounds like they're kind of building a webway. They're also trying to revert biotransference. They're trying to become flesh and blood again. And they're also trying to take over again
and
the whole galaxy.
This anomaly that they've created, let's just talk about the Nephilim one, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of this spreading field that spreads throughout the sector.
That the warp doesn't work in.
Right. And it kind of stills life. In fact, they call it
the stilling.
The stilling. Like people who are in it kind of just become dumbfounded and then just stand there slack-jawed.
Yeah.
Right for harvesting.
And that's exactly the Necrons, and we're kind of blurring into both, but the Necrons just kind of pass the people that are on the ground in stupor because they're like, oh, we'll come back and harvest these, or something behind us will harvest them.
Right.
We have to deal with guys with everything in front of it.
Yeah. Right. But passing through this affects everybody. Like it affects humans. It affects transhumans, meaning Space Marines.
Yeah.
The only thing that really kind of stands against it is the Adeptus Sororitas.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem to impact them. And this is never fully explained as to why, other than it's assumed that their faith in the Emperor as a deity
Right.
somehow is holding us off.
Somehow building a bubble around him. And that's the first win is in the southern pole of one of the planets.
We'll talk. Yeah.
Because
let's come back to that.
Sororitas.
But my point in telling that part is to say the thing that made them feel like a galactic threat to me was the fact that this book focuses on the Nephilim sector and this going on the Nephilim sector, and this is happening in multiple sectors.
Yeah, they hint about it happening everywhere.
Yeah, like they're doing this everywhere. And and it's like, oh, okay, this is dangerous. And yeah. Additionally, the Silent King in this book is gathering forces. Now, some don't agree with him and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But my point is, like, it felt like in reading the story, what we could read of it, we'll talk about that in a minute, that multiple dynasties, like there's dynasties all over the place that are like coming to life and like helping or have been called into service. And that's where I'm like, I've always read like, oh, the Necrons are beginning to wake up, is kind of where my timeline's
and
at.
it's this dynasty and that dynasty and this other dynasty, and they're all separate.
They're all separate, and a lot of times people are stumbling across them and then they awaken them.
Right.
Like here is like a intentional awakening of the Necrons.
Yeah.
As a whole force. And
a
I'm sure there's still,
collection.
yes.
That's the thing. It's a coming together of all in our history, right? A coming together of all the tribes to become a force to reckon with.
Right. So I think from that perspective, why Pariah Nexus matters in the lore of things. And by the way, it sounds like, I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me just preface all this. Like, we may get some stuff wrong here, and we're going to talk about why that is soon. But it sounds like this is happening at the same time like the Plague Wars are happening, and Rabute Gilliman is involved in the Plague Wars. Because at a certain point, like, they say, like, he is involved in it, but he turns a little bit of his attention to this and then sends off Call to go deal with it.
The interesting thing about the Plague Wars I wrote down is, what are the Plague Wars? And we know a little bit about them.
There's novels all about them.
Yeah, I don't know very much about them. I know you do. But this is much like...
Yeah, it's Nurgle versus Ultramarine.
Well, in Star Wars, where he goes, oh, your dad fought in the Clone Wars, and that's all they mention about it. It's like...
Nah, there's more than that.
What's going on over there?
Yeah,
but
you should read those novels. They're actually not
I need
bad.
to.
But yeah, there's like a whole thing that Gilliman has to come back and deal with. And so this is going on. Now, there could be a couple reasons for that. One, Games Workshop is being intentionally obtuse with their timeline at this point.
True.
Intentionally. And because they don't want to call it Warhammer 41,000. Like,
yeah, they don't want to change.
That's why they messed up the timeline and all this. And
I get it, because you don't want to have a title that doesn't match what's going on.
It's supposed to be 10 seconds to midnight all the time. So, okay. So that, and I had another point there, but I've now forgotten. So it was, I think they're intentionally obtuse.
Oh, and then bringing in the like Gilliman and the big named characters, but still getting them to go to
the other places
wherever they are. So like they have a lot of named characters in here that they pull
a lot
back and forth. But I like how they did it with Gilliman, where he's there for a little bit and then he's gone.
Yeah, he's like, I got other stuff I got to be doing.
And you still get like orders here and there.
Right.
But overall, he's gone.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay, so why does it matter in terms of gameplay and 40K rules? Well, here's the thing I've learned about Crusade. Like, it's a bigger concept than we thought in just seeing the basic rule book and then seeing the Leviathan stuff. Like, now I see what Games Workshop's thinking is in terms of, hey, we've created a campaign, Crusade campaign for you. It's your tool to go play with if you want.
That could be totally
different,
unlocked and unique to you, or set up and for the whole gaming group.
Right.
Like, I could be playing my own Crusade, and I just
without engaging anybody.
overlap with you.
Other
you
than
have
the
to be
fact
playing Crusade, but you don't have to be playing my Crusade.
Or I have to be willing to say, I don't care that you have upgraded certain units or certain units have taken
Or I
battle
don't
scars.
use those upgrades / battle
Well,
scars,
then there's no point. Yeah.
but I still keep track of them like it's my
Yeah,
Crusade.
but then you kind of feel like you really want your opponent to be involved in the Crusade.
In a
with you.
Crusade.
A Crusade.
Yeah.
But you're correct in the sense that they don't have to be playing the same Crusade. At a certain point, you have to say, we're going to pick a mission from one or the other because they have different
Right.
results.
But I don't even mean, the Pariah Nexus versus Leviathan.
Right.
I meant your group's Crusade and my group's
No, I get it.
Crusade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's why I think it matters. It offers certainly more ways to play, which I always appreciate. Crusade is not as heavy as I thought it was. Like I initially thought it's a lot of tracking and it's a lot of this. Once you've set your initial kind of list that you can pull from, and that list begins to grow, your order of battle, and that order of battle begins to grow. Like, yes, is there mechanics that you have to do? A little bit. I'm not going to lie. But I played through several Crusade games up at the Tacoma Open.
Yeah.
And it was very easy to play through the game and then go, okay, wait a minute. Shoot, we forgot to keep track of what happened for this unit, that unit, that unit. And we just kind of re-walked ourselves through the game easily. Like it was like, oh yeah,
right.
this unit was destroyed, so I have to roll for that unit. These units were all destroyed. I need to roll to see if they get battle scars. Okay, cool. Who killed that unit? Who killed that unit? Who killed that? This guy, this guy, this guy. Okay, cool.
Right.
And then we were off and we did our quick rolls and then okay, I have this much resource or experience. How do I want to spend it? And that's it. It takes 10 minutes.
Right. And it's something offline, right?
Yeah, you could do it offline.
Other than keeping track
the only reason we were racing to do it at Tacoma was we had the next game coming.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is it is very much the whole kill stealing scenario where the last wound that is lost, that's the unit that killed it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Which is not it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, okay, so we're just talking about right now why it's important.
Yep.
Or why it matters. I think it matters because for two reasons. One, it gives you more ways to play, but two, it gives us insight into what the future of Crusade is going to look like as well, right? Like next could be, I don't know, what's another faction they haven't come out? Tau. Let's just say like the Tau come out,
The
right?
greater good Crusade.
And they come out with the, Crusade of Fire or whatever they want to call it, right? Or there was one that was the Tau versus the Adeptus Mechanicus that Forge World was going to write, and then it never happened.
Oh, I could totally see them twisting that and making it a Crusade.
Right.
Whatever.
But I mean, but my point, Fires of Syraxis is what it was called.
Oh, yeah.
Never got published, right? But like, let's say they were coming out with Fires of Syraxis, Crusade Fires of Syraxis. Okay, cool. Here's all these new ways of playing, new missions, new objectives to get each mission, and new upgrades that your guys can get.
The other thing that just popped into my head about this is you could release a Crusade rulebook that brings factions back into the light that aren't getting refreshed with the latest codex, right? They have to be most likely with a codex already.
Yeah.
So it could be.
I think this is where you run into some potential difficulty, and we saw like in 7th edition where it became, well, my rules are now in this book,
No, but
if you kept it specific to Crusade, that might be
exactly.
different.
And it doesn't have to have new models. It doesn't have to have new rules.
Right.
It's just here's the Crusade campaign for that unit, for that
Army.
the couple armies for that battle that add the agendas and a few other things that add a little bit of flavor.
It
So it
offers
can
a lot of
refresh.
flexibility to kind of do whatever they want. So I think it's interesting in the sense that it opened my eyes to kind of a different way to play. So I think that's why it's kind of making it important.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene a little bit here with Pariah Nexus. We talked a little earlier about there's this
The stilling.
that's going on. But so basically what happens is one fleet, and I'm not going to go too into names. Actually, before we even start about the story, let's talk a little bit about how the story is written, Aaron. How do you feel? Now, Aaron, granted, you do not read as quickly as I do.
I don't.
Or as much literature as I do. Like I read, books all the time.
Right. And I'll admit, I'm not the strongest reader, but I've read a lot of books. Let me rephrase.
You're
I've
a
read
strong technical reader.
Healthy amount of books. And
Let's be clear. Like Aaron is a software engineer and is very adept at, what's the word I'm looking for?
Blowing shit up.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Now I got to beep that out. No, you're very adept at comprehension.
Yes.
Of what you're reading. You may not, for fantasy and science fiction, you may not absorb it super fast. Technical manuals you absorb very quickly.
Yeah, because I didn't have a choice, right?
Right, but my point being, your comprehension level is there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Let's talk about my reading style for a minute. When Jeff was on the show, I used to love when Jeff was on the show because if we interviewed an author, Jeff would see the underlying themes to things, right? Like we would interview John French about Armin. And Jeff would be like, well, in the opening scene, in the prelude, you talk about this, that, the other thing. And then by the end of the story, you're talking about this. So that kind of comes full circle and you bring it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They did mention that at the beginning of the book, right? Actually, listening to Jeff talk about that made me pay way more attention to preludes than I used to. So now I'm like,
what's going on here?
It's setting a direction here and kind of what the book's about. So whereas usually I used to think this is kind of just before the action really starts. Yeah. I was always like, yeah, cool. He shot that guy and he blew stuff up. And then remember that scene where he jumped through the window and okay.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was cool. That being said, I'm a 54-year-old man. I've read a ton of science fiction, a ton of fantasy, a ton of like mystery stuff. Like,
yeah, you read fast. And
I read a lot.
Yeah.
So when you read like that, when you read like I do, a lot of times you're kind of, I don't want to say skimming, but you're not necessarily reading every single word.
Right.
You're gathering from the collection of words. It's weird. Like you gather from the collection of words, the understanding of what has occurred in this paragraph. And okay, this conversation happens. Now I'm moving on to this paragraph. I'm not all, and here's
the opposite thing is for me where I read
every single word.
And I sometimes have to reread them because I have to make sure I understand.
Right. So here's
section.
a perfect example of my reading when I was reading, spoiler alert if you haven't read it, but The Stand by Stephen King. I'm reading along. I'm getting near the climax of the book. I'm reading along super quick because I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And I'm jamming through it. And King like kind of has the climax in one sentence, right? It happens in one sentence. But I was reading so quickly, I passed through that sentence and on to the next. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. Something happened. And I had to go back and then read each line and go, because it was literally like one sentence. It's like, and then the hand of God came down and set off the bomb. And you're like, wait, what? And so I had literally jumped right through that.
Yeah.
So you have your type of reading. I have my type of reading. The reason we bring that up is because the way this book is written is painful to both of us.
Yes. It breaks the flow for both of us.
Listen, I love Games Workshop. I know it's full of passionate guys and gals there.
Absolutely. And honestly, you've written something.
It sucks. It's hard. It's hard.
I had theories of writing stuff when I was in high school. I can't write.
It's hard.
It's hard to write. So our critiques are
take it with a grain of salt.
Armchair quarterbacking at best.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I think that's fair. But also, we are the target audience of this book.
Correct.
It is almost illegible.
I think that's a bit strong, but I don't want to contradict you. You know what I
No,
mean?
you can contradict me all you
No,
want.
it's not because I don't want to hurt your feelings. It's because you're not too far wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's like I was reading it the other night, and I made a comment to my wife. I'm like, how many adjectives do you need for a noun?
Yeah.
Like there were like 3.
It's like super over descriptive.
One of the other ones I commented on was bark. BARQUE. I'm like,
Yeah.
did they mean barge?
No, you had to go look it
I
up.
looked it up, and I'm like, why didn't you just say a ship?
Yeah.
You could enhance it by calling it a spaceship. I don't care. Why did you have to call it a bark?
Because they probably got tired of calling things ships.
No, because I don't know. Yeah, so there were a lot of
Here's
stumblings that went through.
here's an example. And this is a light example because it's just I opened the book and stuck my finger down.
Yeah, and you're only like 2 pages in on that. It looks like.
Steadfastly aloof from the Necron nobility who supported the Silent King for all manner of obsequious or underhanded political agendas, Oricon the Diviner considered his own motives for the coming to the Nephilim subsector far more important and far-reaching. Okay.
Which,
That sentence makes sense.
right, and that's to me, that's not even a bad one, right?
That's not a bad one, but you can see how that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Now, I think I've at least 2 theories, maybe 3.
I have bad theories, which I don't think are true.
Okay, let's go with your bad theory you don't think is true.
So one of them was, it feels like they put it through AI and said, hey, make this sound smarter,
It's a possibility.
right?
I don't think that's the case because I think
really don't,
a lot of
but-
times it's using made up words, so many made up words, especially when they start dealing with like all the
names of that ship, the names of this ship,
not just that, the because you can train
army's
AI to do
name,
that, but
yeah.
like there's like that point where they're unleashing all these weapons from the Dark Age of technology and the Necrons are unleashing weapons that they've, been forbidden to use. And you're like, what did I just read? Like there was what?
It is like the apocalypse has come, and oh wait, by the way, we missed that there's another apocalypse coming. Oh wait, and there's a third apocalypse coming. It's like, oh come on.
On Thalcifer, Majos Invald Viridian unleashed Morgar Fex's Hyper Alembic upon the Orish legions of Overlord Kutmek.
Yeah,
It's like, oh God, like AI didn't write that.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like even the words that make sense together
Are tossed there. There's fewer words that make
mouthfuls.
sense between. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was brutal. So here's
it was
my thinking. One, they kind of went the dark Star Trek route and like threw in a bunch of techno babble to make it seem like this is crazy technology beyond like what you can conceive. And so it has names to it that, are there's like a point where there's an explosion that happens. They name this explosion and you're like, cool.
cool. It's an explosion. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. And then I get adding flavor, but this was getting in the way of my enjoyment of the story. And then the other thing is a lot of this feels like filler to increase the page count of the book.
Yeah, but you mentioned this before, and I didn't think it was.
Because typically you need to hit a certain number of pages before you perfect bind a book or you hardback a book.
But then why wouldn't you say ship instead of bark?
Because that's 2 or 3 more letters than ship, Aaron.
Spaceship.
Well, there you go.
Like, that's why I don't think it was. Now, it could be that this person's vocabulary, because we don't know who wrote it,
I think it was written by several people, actually.
well, I know that the different stories were, clearly, because
Some are like...
the Knight's story I thought was really well done. It was really short, but I thought it was really well done. But it could be that their vocabulary is that broad, and it makes perfect sense to them. But they're also not the one who's going to be reading it.
This is a tough read, guys. Okay, so guys and gals, this is a.
It is.
It's an effort. It was an effort to get through. It reminded me of when not Arcs of Omen, but the final stuff of the 7th edition I know. You can probably hear the nails of my dog as she's clipping around. I can't get too mad at her. She's a 14-year-old Siberian Husky. She's
a sweetheart.
She's a sweetheart. Okay. But she'll settle down in a minute. I'm sorry, folks. But yeah, what was it? The one where Gilliman came back and the triumvirate or whatever they all of the Eldar became actually gosh, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it reminded me of that series where it's like we were going to cover each book, and then I was like, this first book, this is awful.
That's right.
I cannot read the rest.
It wasn't The Gathering Storm.
Yes.
Was it Gathering Storm?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first book. I don't know I can't remember what the series. Anyway, if I had to read a second book in this series, it would not happen.
Yes.
It wouldn't happen. If I didn't have to have read this to talk to you guys today on the microphone, right, Arya, I don't think it would have happened.
Yeah, I think I would have read the first story about the Space Marines and been like,
yeah, I'm done.
That's good enough.
That's cool. Let's go to the rules.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem with that.
You would have missed a lot.
It's actually a really great story.
Yeah.
But my God, it is hard to get through. A lot goes on, and it sets this really interesting setting for people to play in.
Right.
Like, it's actually, the ideas and the concepts are very, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, the stilling, draining the psyche basically out of people, the sororitas being immune to it.
The unleashing of all these extremely powerful technological weapons that wreak havoc over the entire war zone.
Silent King kind of flexing his muscles.
The Necrons getting into a civil war.
Coming in for the Civil War. The Blackstone stuff to begin with.
Yeah.
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
So, if you're willing to try, I think there's a lot here that you could build a campaign out of. Which is the 100%. Point.
And you've got the rules to do it, and that's cool. But the lore matters in Crusade. The lore matters in Crusade. Yeah. And when it is not presented in a way that's digestible.
No, I think 90% of the people would start reading any of these stories, probably any of the stories in it, because it's kind of one big continuing story, and stop.
What it is one large continuing story about the conflict and the forces involved and the forces that come to reinforce those forces. And then it also has a couple almost book stories that it breaks out into 2 pages. And then it has a bunch of sidebars, which are usually focused on a new character, or not new, I should say, a character new to the conflict.
Right.
Like the Stormlord arrives. So he has like a little call out, and it's like, okay, here's what he was thinking and here's what he was going to do. And he came here with this objective. Or Belisarius Call shows up, right?
Yeah.
So just a quick summary of kind of the story is, so you have this emergency kind of beacons are sent out, and screams and terror and blah, blah, blah is sent out, and then nothing, like everything goes dark, which is not very unlike the Fall of Orpheus, actually. Fall of Orpheus, the Forge World, the Imperial Armor Necron book, which is a great book. Okay. They send out a fleet to go deal with this. It kind of passes through this field. And when you pass through this field, like, it messes with your mind. It causes people to go catatonic. It just, and it has like all these strange effects.
The astropaths can't see very well. They can't communicate very well.
Some of them kill themselves. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole mess. They arrive, they find Necrons, they get engaged with Necrons, they get their butts handed to them. They are able to retreat a little bit. Other forces get called in to help.
Call shows up.
Yeah. Basically what happens is Gilliman sees, hey, there's really something serious going on here. It's like, oh, he turns like a slight amount of his attention to this deal, because he's operating on such a high level.
Yeah.
He basically says, okay, this is serious. We got to go deal with it. Belisarius Call, you are my man. Go out there.
And he knows the most about Blackstone.
But it's interesting. It calls, and I don't know that this has been said before because I probably haven't covered it all. But it calls Belisarius Cawl one of Gilliman's lieutenants, meaning that Gilliman has surrounded himself with people that are not like Cawl is effectively Adeptus Mechanicus, right? So like,
yeah,
it's interesting. Like he kind of reports to Gilliman. So Cawl goes out there, bringing with him a huge amount, like
almost an armada.
It is,
size.
yeah. With all these different factions of Adeptus Mechanicus with him, as well as Marines and guardsmen and like all these forces arrive.
And he gives orders that he knows won't be universally accepted. So
so let's talk about that because this is a very interesting thing. So, okay, there's also an Inquisitor around, a female Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Who, she's from Ordo Xenos, and she may or may not be working with the Stormlord at one point. You're not quite sure if she is or not, because she kind of takes off for a while and then comes back.
When she talks about being hunted and
by what's his name, the
assassin, the death marks.
Yeah, the death marks. But like, who's the guy that controls the death marks? There's like
not Surza.
Yeah,
was it Surza that she pissed off?
Yeah. So kind of all over the place here. So I'm trying to ring us back in.
Yep.
Basically what ends up happening is this war of escalation where they realize that the focus of this stillness thing, this field that is going on, the Orpheus,
the Nephilim,
the Nephilim phenomenon is this thing called a Blackstone pylon. Now,
many of them.
Yeah. Yes. But they find it centered at this one.
Yeah.
It's massive in scale. This is where I was talking about earlier. The Necrons are using these Blackstone pylons in conjunction with, it's so goofy. It's goofy, but it's cool. Like in conjunction with planetary bodies and the organization of where they are to create these effects. And so it almost reads like circuitry on a galactic scale, right? And so this is how they are doing this in portions of the galaxy and basically trying to create these fields everywhere in the galaxy that just decimate living stuff. So they discover this. They are able to destroy one of the pylons eventually.
They destroy, if you're talking about the Adeptus Sororitas, they destroy a gate.
The Adeptus Sororitas destroy a gate. Oh, and that's the other thing. Like every named character pretty much shows up here. Yeah, the Adeptus Sororitas that destroys the gate is the one from Daemon Fugue.
It is Daemon Fugue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, which she gets like a bunch of people to follow her, and they basically go destroy this gate because the Necrons are using these gates to transport around and reinforce. And so destroying this gate kind of prevents that from the receiving reinforcements, but also from them being able to get away. Like they'll kind of just like disappearing and then reappearing, and people are like, oh, what's going on? They discover these gates in one of the polar regions of one of the planets. They destroy them. She figures it out, destroys it. That kind of cripples them, but they end up destroying one of the pylons. And in so doing, destroy the planet that it's on.
Yeah, that's what the Inquisitor reappears out of nowhere.
She's like, hey, I know how to destroy these pylons.
Goes in, who knows what happens. All of a sudden, the pylon gets destroys like half the planet.
It strips the atmosphere from the planet entirely.
And
then cracks it down to the core.
Yeah.
And then she's somehow gotten out of this and messages Cawl, and she's like,
hey, thanks, peace out.
Yeah, hey, I'm out, and takes off. And so there's a bunch of supposition is, wait a minute, this coincides with when the Stormlord arrived and things happened, and is she working for him or...
Yeah. And like all of a sudden, to the point of when the Stormlord arrives, all of a sudden all the Necrons kind of disappear.
Right.
They're like, hey, we're winning. And no, it's because they're getting attacked by the Stormlord and his dynasty. Right. So they go and deal with the bigger threat.
And I thought this was pretty interesting because you have the Silent King who is no longer able to use like the protocols that he can just control Necrons.
Right. He destroyed those when he left.
Right.
Basically.
So he has to convince and cajole the leaders of each of the dynasties to basically follow him. Well, some are not too happy about that, the Stormlord being one of them.
Right.
So not only is this whole thing going on driven by the Necrons, but now you have this infighting, and in fact, a civil war within the Necrons too, which I actually think is really cool, by the way. And if you look at what they're doing, there's like one point where they mention, oh, the leagues of Votann, like there's this particular league of Votann in a neighboring system that's been dealing with this system here. So what they're doing is they're opening the door to make sense for you to have battles between different armies. Oh, you have Necrons, I have Necrons, and we want to fight. Well, hey, I like the Stormlord.
Yeah,
well, I don't like the Stormlord.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we'll fight. And it's actually really well done from that capacity, because it's not, there are so many factions in 40K, of which half or more are considered Imperial. Why would they be fighting? In a campaign, how often have we been like, why would the Dark Eldar be here, and the Eldar, and the Space Marines, and the Tyranids? A lot of times you really feel like it's shoehorned in. Here, it feels fairly natural. Like, I think they did a good job of fitting things in fairly naturally here.
And we mentioned, but before or between recording, that like the Tau isn't really here.
I didn't see a mention of the
and
Tau.
The Tyranids aren't really here. And we talked about earlier they had Leviathan, and they're kind of everywhere anyway.
Yeah.
So that works out too.
It's interesting, like playing Tyranids in here. Well, we'll talk about that in the rules section a little bit.
We're getting to where Chaos gets in. So we might as well mention that Chaos got in too.
Yeah. So of course they did. So eventually, somehow, they end up destroying a second pylon, damaging another pylon.
Yeah, with this big giant sphere of darkness that disappears.
I'm backing up. I'm back. Went too far forward. So at one point, what is occurring is you have all of these guys who report to Call that are out trying to do their work. These are all other AdMech guys.
Mostly listening to him.
Call has come up with a plan on his way here that he says, hey, we take this Blackstone. I've created this device out of Blackstone. I can't remember what it's called, Aaron. But
something brazier.
Nope.
Brazier.
Nope.
Yeah, it's the brazier.
Nope. They're called liminal abrasers.
Abrasers.
Yeah. Not braziers. Braziers are things. Anyway, braziers are one thing. Braziers are another thing. And these are abrasers. Liminal abrasers. So anyway, he comes up with this plan of, hey, we positively charged this Blackstone or Nephilim.
Because they determined that the pylons are, quote, negatively charged.
Whatever that means. One is charged with hate and one is charged with love. And basically, he then creates these plans for how you can build these devices that are going to like offset the field and all this. So
yeah.
It's untested.
They don't know where he got this idea.
Call has created it. Nobody knows where he got it. But he also doesn't tell everybody like all the details. He's just like, look, here's what you need to know. Get some of this Blackstone, positively charge it. Here's the plans for building this thing.
Rub two sticks together.
Do this. Right. But of course, within Call's organization, some of these Adeptus Mechanicus are like, well, I don't agree with this. Like, I'm going to do this my way, or I'm going to do this differently.
Right.
Some of them are like, they see it greedily and they're like, oh, I'm going to experiment further and I'm going to do that. Like, it's interesting because I love the fact that, like, it's not like Call said this and everybody did this.
Right. And I made the comment about even in the Mechanicus, there's the Puritans and the Radicals.
Yeah.
And the Radicals brought all their
radical
Xenos
stuff,
weapons and stuff but they hush about it because they don't want anybody to know.
Right. And so what ends up happening as a result of all this is things get worse and worse. Finally, things are escalating to the point where some of the AdMech guys are unleashing weapons that they're not supposed to be using.
That they might not even know what they're supposed to do.
They're not even sure what it does, but they're unleashing it. In response to this, the Necrons are like, oh yeah, check this out. We're going to unleash this thing that, like, I don't know, turns off stars or, what I mean. And then they're like, oh, yeah, well, we've got these things from the dark age of technology. Oh, yeah, well, we've got, and it escalates like out of control.
Yeah.
And Call's finally like, hey, knock it off. Like, stop. Nobody's allowed to use anything unless I say it's okay. Like, you put all that stuff back.
And right before that is when the planet comes in, right?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Oh.
So then the final straw is one of these AdMech guys unleashes these satellites from the dark age of technology. And it's like, I don't know, it's like a dozen satellites or anything, but they string something together and they're cutting through the fields of the Necron like tomb ships. Like they have no defense against it. It's just like cuts them open. And then it proceeds to cut open the Imperial ships. And then it's like cutting open more Necron ships and more Imperial ships. And finally they detonate. And when they detonate, it creates like this fisheye effect, like this warp effect. And then something comes through the warp. And that's Wormwood. So that's the home planet of Vashtor the Archifant.
Vashtor, that's it.
It's too many names. Like every name is in. This is one of the things I actually don't care about with 40K is that there are billions of people. Like, why do we always have to follow the same people in these stories? Like,
because they sell books.
I guess so. I guess so. But anyway, so Vashtor the Archiphane's planet comes in now that like the field is gone that keeps chaos from coming through. Here comes Vashtor. And that's where the story is.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, we're good.
Which is kind of cool because now it's kind of like, and now you fight the campaign you want to fight.
Right.
Which is what I appreciate. I don't need the ending spelled out for me because then I don't get to feel like I'm a part of it.
And they do say, like on the last page, that the stilling has ended.
Right.
So now you don't have to deal with that just in time to play the campaign.
Right.
Which I think would have been cool if they had rules where how the stilling is affecting some people, and then halfway through the game, the stilling stops, and then you could do, or
you
if you achieve
just
an
like that
objective,
because
the Necrons always win.
Necrons didn't have to phase out anymore. So anyway, if our telling of this story seemed confusing,
welcome to reading it.
You feel like you've just read it.
Yeah.
It is absolutely confusing and frustratingly so. But by God, by the time you got to the end of it, I was like, okay, it's a cool story. I didn't need to walk across coals of fire to get there.
I do have to say I guess the second little story, the one about the knights, I thought was
there's some good stuff.
Well done, and it was cool watching the Gauss blasters like rip armor off the knights, and so I thought that was really neat. And then the other writing came back in.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You're like, oh, cool. Okay, cool story. And you read that and you're like, okay, cool. And then maybe it's, we're right back to where we're
continuing. And it's clear that one or two people wrote the overarching story.
Of course.
And then there were these little inserts here and there. But whoever did the outline and the idea of it, great job.
Conceptually, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And
it is difficult to read.
Yes. And that goes back to earlier comments.
Okay.
We'll be done with that.
So I think we've beat that topic to death about the complexity of the story. That being said, pretty much every character from the Necron Codex is featured in here. Pretty much. There might be one or two not. I don't think Trazen the Infinite is in it. I was mistaken when I said that to you earlier.
Okay, and Oberon, or whatever his name, isn't in there.
I can't keep track of your characters. There's not a lot of Space Marine characters in here. So they're not like, oh, here's, Dante or, whatever. But
Gilliman.
But the scale and scope of what they've written, like they almost never really touch on the same Space Marine chapter twice because they're trying to, I think, imply a lot of Space Marine chapters are here so that yours can be here too.
Right. And it's not full chapters, right? It's
it's always a company or something two of a chapter. But I think there's some Ultramarines there. There's Imperial Fists at one point. There's who's the other one? Like the Silver Skulls or something. I can't remember. Anyway,
Silver Stars. There's a few that
and there's some that I've never heard of. Yeah. Right. So I think that's cool. They add some new characters, like the Inquisitor. She's new. never heard of her before.
And she doesn't die. They introduced another character that
She
dies.
took off. They kill a lot of characters, but none of the big ones.
Yeah.
They talk about Rabute. They talk about Call. Call is involved in some stuff. Yeah. So I mean, it just the Damon Fugue, whatever her name is,
Stormlord,
Ephriel Stern, something like that. I can't remember what her name is. What was the one you just said?
the Stormlord.
Oh yeah.
Surza,
Those are
Silent Kings.
See, those are all Necrons. I already covered that one.
They're the ones I know.
Every Necron. My point being, there's quite a show here of characters. But also it makes a lot of sense to have your forces here. Tyranids, maybe. I mean, you could just say whatever. Yeah, I don't know why they'd be harvesting Blackstone necessarily, but cool. And we'll talk about like how the campaign plays in the next section.
Yeah, and we'll also talk about how, in theory, you could play Leviathan. One person could play Leviathan while you play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so with that, we are going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. And so now I want to talk a little bit about the rules around Crusade in this book, in the Pariah Nexus versus the Crusade rules that are presented in Leviathan. And the reason I say that is because I didn't, like, in my naivete, I did not understand kind of what they were going for with Crusade in general.
Right.
I thought Crusade was just like a general set of rules, and this is how you would grow. The first indication I had that wasn't the case was when I got my Crusade rules in the back of my Chaos Space Marine Codex. In the back of the Chaos Space Marine Codex, you're kind of, the Crusade rules in there open up chaos-specific things. You're spending your experience points to get specific things, and you're kind of working on these 3 tracks, right? In the chaos ones. Those who play chaos are familiar with that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're also not talking about the Tyrannic War ones, which are the Leviathan ones. But I'm going to compare and contrast a little bit the Blackstone, because I think more people have the Tyrannic War ones, because if you bought the big starter set, you got the hardback Leviathan book, if yours is not falling apart yet, like mine is.
Yeah, I'm surprised yours is falling apart.
They all are. They're pretty inferior quality.
Mine's still pristine. I guess I don't.
You don't play enough.
Damn it.
And so it's kind of hard to describe, but my point here is that initially I thought what we got in the Leviathan set was, these are the Crusade rules, the general Crusade rules. And they are. But then in addition to the general Crusade rules, you have specific rules to that theater of war. So in this book, Aaron, they still give you the generic Crusade rules. They're all at the front. They talk about how to, how to build your list, how you do requisitions to grow your order of battle. Order of battle is your list. For those who aren't familiar with Crusade, I don't want to go through like the whole base Crusade's instructions. Maybe we do that at a later date, but I don't know that it's worth it. You can find the Crusade rules.
Yeah, but basically, order of battle is the list that you pull your units from.
Right.
That you build your list from.
So, for example, at the Tacoma Open, what they said was you have a 1,500 point order of battle. We're going to play 1,000 point games. So I could swap units out from that order of battle throughout the thing. But if they didn't take part in an engagement, they couldn't gain any experience. Right. And so,
so overall, you're going to probably stick with a core list and swap out just a couple of units.
Right. Like, and this is actually a good example. During that Tacoma Open, my mistake, when I heard narrative, I thought, I'm not going to bring like this super punchy list. I'm going to tone it down a bit and spread this out so it's really thematic.
and everybody brought super punchy lists. So I was immediately like, well, I'm now swapping out the things that are super punchy out of my order of battle into this. So I lost like 1 or 2 rounds of experience for things I switched out. But it was like, I'm getting rid of this librarian. I'm bringing in my demon prince, and I'm bringing in this, and then adjusting the points so that I had a 1,000-point list, and just move those things out of my list into the order of battle again. It allows you to, the general rules allow you to do very simple things like weapon modifications, getting Crusade relics, taking battle scars, getting taken out of action, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it has all the base rules about
and how you muster your army, your Crusade army.
Right.
Okay. Then attached to that, you'll find in the Leviathan rules, the Leviathan War. And at that point, it describes, okay, armies that are fighting in this war, here are the additional rules for what the objectives are, what you're trying to accomplish, and other ways you can improve outside of just the basic, I improved my weapon or, whatever. The Nephilim War does the same thing, but for the Nephilim
the
campaign.
Pariah Nexus,
The Pariah Nexus campaign. So how are they different? Well, the Pariah Nexus campaign focuses on Blackstone discovery, right? As you complete missions, if you succeed in those missions, and that's, by the way, not whether you win or lose against your opponent, it's whether you
complete your agendas.
You complete your agenda in that mission, right? Because Aaron, you and I are going to play a game, and we choose one of the missions from this. We're going to do dig site raid, okay? And so we say, hey, here's our armies, and here's what I'm bringing, and yada yada. We go through what the mission rules are. Blackstone collecting at the start of the battle. The objective marker on the battlefield contains 1 Blackstone fragment. At the start of your turn, if a character model from your Crusade army is within range of that objective marker that contains a Blackstone fragment, that model can collect it. Okay. At the end of the battle, each player scores 10 victory points for each Blackstone fragment possessed by a character model from their Crusade army. In addition to each of those, for each of those Blackstone fragments, the player of the Crusade gains 1 Blackstone fragment. Right. So,
but then there's also in the agenda.
Your agenda, though, may be totally different. And this is personal to you and your force. You guys may be doing the same agenda, but you could be doing different agendas. So, for example, I could have also taken Recover Blackstone data, which says at the start of my shooting phase, I can select an infantry or mounted unit from my Crusade army that's not battle shocked and eligible to shoot. And that unit is tasked with recovering Blackstone data and is not eligible to shoot or declare a charge that turn. And at the end of that turn, if that unit's within range of an objective marker, I roll a d6, and on a 4 to 5, I gain an experience, and on a 6, I gain 2 experience, and I gain a command point.
A Crusade. Probably a command
it's a command point. Each time a unit from your Crusade army gains an experience as a result of this agenda, you gain a Blackstone fragment.
Yeah.
So by the end of a mission, I could have collected 5 or 6 Blackstone fragments, right?
And that's if you choose the agenda from this book, because you could also choose.
Before we go into that, let's stay on this book, because then I'm gonna I want to go to that. Then what happens is you can then spend later in, you finished your game. We've gathered all our experience. I have 6 Blackstone fragments. There are upgrades I can buy utilizing 1 experience points and 2 Blackstone fragments.
Yeah.
And some require both. So it makes for a pretty interesting thing. At the end of the day, you're trying to just grow your army, gain experience, make them stronger. Occasionally you'll roll things that make them weaker. You can spend experience to offset those weaknesses sometimes. So for example, up in Tacoma, my Demon Prince got wounded, and basically any 6 rolled to hit against him was an automatic wound. That's devastating for a Demon Prince who has a toughness of 9. That was like, I have enough experience right here that I can just basically nix that one. But instead of gaining power, I just was able to offset. And so it's actually quite fun. It doesn't take a lot of time to calculate your experience, to calculate how much Blackstone, and it actually becomes kind of fun, I think, during the game when you're gaining Blackstone.
Well, and chatting about it in the conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's actually a whole lot of fun. So, Aaron, you were just about to say, well, I'm gathering Blackstone and doing this.
There's agendas in your codex.
Yep.
That, I think the Necron Codex has the 3 paths as well. They earn them differently.
Yeah.
And then if you complete one of those paths, then you get like a superpower for one mission.
Right.
And then you have to do the path again.
Right.
Which is pretty cool.
But see, you can work. You don't have to choose a Blackstone agenda. You could choose an agenda from your codex.
Right. But then you're also not getting Blackstone.
Correct. Though, in that particular mission that I described, you could get a little bit of Blackstone.
Right. But some of these agendas give you 4 Blackstone.
Yeah.
So if you're
are you giving up?
Yeah. So you have to balance that out, or take one from here, one from there, stuff like that. And you could even use the ones in the Leviathan.
But actually, I think what it does, and this may prove out to be wrong in the future. Lord knows I've been wrong about stuff before. But what it does is increases the potential length of the game the campaign you're playing, right? Because you have so many options to choose. I mean, you could focus down one path and just be like, I'm just going all Blackstone, baby, and hit that. But you could also try to do something a little more well-rounded. Or if you're running an organized campaign, you could do it where the campaign organizers are like, this round, nobody can take an agenda from
the Pariah
Nexus campaign. Everybody has to take one from their codex.
Or
from Leviathan or whatever.
Whatever, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there is a campaign section in here as well that talks about how there's 3 different factions, for lack of a better term. And there's badges you could get based on those factions.
Yeah. Which give you different benefits as well.
Yeah, which gives you more ideas. But yeah, you could do anything your heart desires, right?
Yep.
Now you could only take the agendas from this book, or everybody gets this one bonus agenda, and then you get your 2 chosen agendas, or however you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really appreciated, so when I got to Tacoma and I had not bought this book, I had hauled my Leviathan book up there thinking Crusade is Crusade. And then they were like, oh, we're doing this. I'm like, I have no clue what they're talking about. So I tried to go buy the book at the GW store they had at the event. Of course, they didn't have it. And I was like, oh man, I really should have bought it. Fortunately, I was able to share it with other people, which is frustrating to do when you're both trying to buy things and
flip pages really quick.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It wasn't that bad, but it was annoying. So I went and immediately ordered the book and got it, and cool. I think it's worth it. I think it's a purchase worth having. So let's talk a little bit about how this would be tracked, because one of the things I realized in playing at that thing is very easy to cheat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super easy. You're kind of on your own in terms of how you've spent points or how you've, what you've upgraded or what's gotten experience. There's really, it's everybody being trusted to do their, do their own policing of themselves. Right.
Right.
If I were running a campaign for this, I think what I would do is probably create some kind of, Google Doc or Google spreadsheet rather, where people have to go enter how many experience they got each round that we played.
Yeah, so you couldn't go too far out of wax.
Yeah.
Because people would also have to say how many guys they lost, right? Because they have to roll the negative.
Right. What were the results of that? That should all be rolled with a witness, I would think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to roll for these things. Can you watch me and vouch for me? I think that takes away any of we do the same thing in Necromunda.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody kind of sits there and goes, okay, I'm rolling for this. I'm rolling for that.
Right. And then we go off and buy our own stuff.
Right.
Right. You don't have to sit there and watch that part.
But you just have to know that you have that amount of money and it's documented. So I think I would create some kind of spreadsheet that would be helpful, I think, not necessarily just to prevent cheating, but it also lets everybody know like who's gotten what,
Right.
how many experience you've gotten, what you're updating, et cetera, et cetera. That helps both sides.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that what would be awesome is if the app that we've been using for all our games lately, if we could use it for Crusade as well.
I wish.
Amazing.
I wish it tracked Crusade.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to actually do that.
Yeah, that's because it would be difficult. You would actually need.
It would not be impossible. It would be a sizable. Here's the thing. I think it would be a sizable investment for them to do it
with a very small return, probably, and
Yeah.
probably not a lot of people using it.
Probably not a lot of people using it. I mean, the reality is most people do not play 40K using Crusade rules.
Right.
I'm hoping to change
Until this drops.
I'm hoping to change that a little bit because I think it's such an open-ended, loose kind of campaign system. It works pretty well. You know, and if somebody's running away with something like mad, you know, you
Fix it.
fix
Start
it
over.
or you start over or whatever. I will say in the 6 games or so I played at the Tacoma Open, you know, I watched an opponent bring like I talked about before, a brass scorpion to a 1,000-point game, which I feel is overkill. I mean, it could make for some thematic stuff, I guess, but also he had dumped every upgrade he had into that brass scorpion as he gained Blackstone and then upgraded it
with the Blackstone. Okay. So I'm like, it would have to earn its experience. It can't share
Sure.
experience.
Do you know how many things that thing killed?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So it gained experience pretty quickly and was pretty tough. It wasn't tough enough I couldn't kill it. I just want to point that out. I killed it. I didn't win the game, but
still
by
love
God,
that
I
model.
killed it.
That model is awesome looking.
So, I mean, like anything in 40K, it can be abused and you know, people go, oh, this is the best options to take. I'm sure there are those that will go through and figure that out. But so far, like on its surface, there's a lot of choices and a lot of things to be done for not a lot of effort. Like, honestly, we've played in Necromunda campaigns where there's a lot of rolling and a lot of decision making that goes on after the game that you have to figure out what you're going to do and how this works. And every campaign in Necromunda is very, very different from the other types of campaigns. Here, the campaigns are different enough, but the basic concept is the same.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is it has that same feel with less than half the options.
Yeah.
So you get that same, hey, my army is growing, my army is
Changing.
is getting hindered,
Yeah.
my army is evolving
Yes.
without as many options, so you're not bogged down in it.
And it's also not as brutal as a Necromunda campaign.
Yeah,
Like a Necromunda campaign would be like, my guy goes to the medic, my guy dies. Okay, cool.
right.
There, you know, now you can lose a unit, but you just replace the unit with a fresh one.
Well, what it says is all your units that die
Yeah.
come back fully healed the next battle. There are some drawbacks where you roll to see if you get a negative skill. If you get a negative skill and they only have 1 experience, scrap them.
Those units aren't dead. Those
Get
units
another
are
one.
out of action.
Yeah.
Right. You can actually have a unit be destroyed, like gone, and
It's-
then you have to replace it.
It's when you get 3 negative marks, right?
Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then you just replace it with another one that,
With a fresh one of the same type.
yeah. And it's,
If that's what you want to do.
if that's what, but you have the points in your order of battle,
Right.
and then you use those points.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be the same unit. Yeah.
Correct. So I tend to just like, oh, I lost a rhino. I replace it with another rhino.
Yeah. Rhino number 2.
Yeah. I have to say, you know, my experience with it at Tacoma just gave me a taste of it at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
I would definitely play this. Like if you have Necrons, so it makes it super easy. I have Chaos, so that works great. Like I feel like I would absolutely, like our next game, we should start doing this.
Yeah. I
Like,
think
you
that would
know.
be fun. That was our plan when Campos and Cheyenne came up.
Yeah, but
and
then
then it got derailed by
got derailed
them
'cause-
coming up, which is fine.
And I think Shell might find it interesting too. You know, I'd really like to get her on. She does not want to be on the show. She's not like, she was going to come on when I was having trouble finding somebody to step in for Josh for a little bit. And then she's like, all right, I'll do it. And I'm like, I don't want you to not do it.
Yeah.
I'll find like somebody will step in. It's fine. And I've got like a bunch of stuff lined up, but
a bunch of people that.
Yeah. But I think she would offer an interesting perspective, especially as a newer player.
Yes.
That people would find interesting. So look, if you want Shell to be on the show,
paint stuff purple.
No, start posting in the
ICs.
Don't mention that I asked you to start posting. She's never going to listen to this, so I could say that. Post there like, hey, we'd love to hear Shell's opinion on, because
it's funny.
I bet you I could get her to join. It's interesting watching somebody who, like, she's driving a lot of the, like, I want to play. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, we took her army to Nova. We each brought, I think, 1,000 points of our armies just so it was travel, friendly. And she didn't get to play. And she's like, oh, I didn't get to play a game. I really wanted it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm like, sorry. We were doing so much charity stuff. It was like, but at Adepticon, she's definitely going to play.
That's usually me at Adepticon is I take my army and I don't play.
She's going to bring her own army in her own bag and she's going to carry it and she's going to play. So now, you know what I forgot to mention? Okay. So all right, let's summarize. Like Crusade, Pariah Nexus.
Thumbs up.
I think it's a thumbs up. It's so funny. Like Jeff was on, like I posted a picture of Jeff and I in the Facebook group and somebody said, I give that a strength 10 AP1. And I was like, I forgot we used to rate products like that.
That's right.
We used to give them a strength and an AP rating. I will not go back to that. That was a terribly cumbersome and tiresome method.
It wasn't even that. We had to give the weapon it was because it's a strength in AP.
Yeah, that's true. I give it a las cannon, strength 9 AP2 or whatever it was.
Oh man, that's right.
No thanks. It also doesn't work. It doesn't work in the new
AP -4.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, listen. I think it's a strong product. I think if you're interested in campaigns, this might be an interesting way for you to go. Like, if you think, because 9th edition had a very heavy Crusade rule set, that's what we're dealing with in 10th edition, I promise you it looks more confusing than it is.
Right.
Much like Adeptus Titanicus rules. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around them. Once you start playing it, you're like, oh, this is super easy. Like, every unit that was in the battle gets an experience point. Cool. Every unit that killed another unit gets an experience point. Cool. It's like very straightforward.
Right.
How many Blackstone did I get? All right. Now what can I buy with them?
The most confusing thing I saw was the Crusade points. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what do you use Crusade points for? What do you use? Crusade points are how you get the underdog. That's all they're used for.
Right.
So if I have 10 and you have 4, you get a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when I finally got to that part, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it was Crusade point when they said CP, but I think it was.
I think you were right. I think it was command point.
So anyway, look, it's a $60 book,
and it's small for $60.
It's 120 pages for $60, and I get that can be a barrier of entry. The other interesting thing. Oh, here's the other confusion point I had that I forgot to mention. So I got the Crusade. The Pariah Nexus cards. You do not need those to play this. All of the missions that you would play, that you need to play,
are
in the book here. And in fact, many of those you want to play because the Blackstone. Now, that being said, your Crusade or the Crusade campaign organizer could be like, everybody draw a random mission from the Pariah Nexus deck. Play that. It's like a tournament. Those are all tournament style missions. Those are made to make sure everything was balanced, A to B, blah, blah, blah. You could play that mission, take your agendas from the Pariah Nexus book to gain Blackstone that way. Just know you'll gain more Blackstone playing Crusade missions, the Crusade missions. I hope that's clear. Like, I hope I haven't caused a lot of confusion. I hope I don't sound like the narrative of this book sounds.
I think the big key takeaway is it's super flexible.
Yep.
Do what you want.
Yep.
Make sure you have fun with it.
Yep. That's almost too generic, but sure. I think the key takeaways are, yes, super flexible, agreed. Focus of the campaign is to get Blackstone and experience for your troops.
Yep.
You can mix it with your Codex campaign rules, or the
or just use this, or the
Leviathan campaign rules if you chose to. But I think it really stands out when you just stay focused in that theater of war.
And I do hope that whatever the next one is that they do something similar to Blackstone, whatever it ends up being.
I like to do something entirely different.
They can, but I like it being unique. I like it being something you get and you use.
See, I wonder if I were playing Tyranids in this, like would I focus on this, or would I focus on gaining my biomass from the Tyranid Codex?
Well, the biomass is definitely more thematic.
Yeah, but it also probably speaks directly. I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
And maybe that's why Tyranids don't show up in the
Well, they're not shown
lore
here, but they could do weird bio stuff with
Blackstone.
Oh, creepy.
Don't eat the Blackstone.
Anyway, all right. I was going to say something else. I had something else to add about this at Nova Open. I've completely lost it because I wanted to summarize this before I went off on a tangent. Shoot. Well, I've lost it.
I think we summarized it though.
Yeah, but it wasn't about this. It was about something from Nova, and I've completely. Oh, I know what it is. Okay. I'm so sorry. We're kind of all over the place with this. At Nova Open, they ran an event that was super interesting to me. Like super interesting. So we've played in team tournaments before.
Yes.
You and I played in that tournament with the orc players that time. Remember where they got so drunk that we were just like, ugh, this is not even fun anymore.
Yep.
Okay. They ran a 3-person team tournament at Nova, and this is how it worked. Each team had 3 people. In one of your games, in 2 of your games, you are paired with another person on your team. In the other game, it is you against 2 people who are paired together. So at one point, you're playing 1 versus 2, and all the other times you're playing 2 versus 1. And you have a 2,000 point list as a single player that has to be able to be broken into 1,000 points so you can pair with your other person.
Oh, interesting.
So it's kind of like a round robin thing where 2 of your games you're partnered with your other 2 players, and then your third game you're playing solo against 2 people.
But there's never a 2-on-2 game.
There's not a 2-on-2 game, nor is there a 1-on-1 game.
Interesting.
And I'm like, that's a really cool idea.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that would be super fun.
Yeah.
And you'd have to really, like, there's also like a meta where you'd have to be like, okay, we have 3 armies. We have to figure out how they're going to work together best. Whether they're all the same faction or whether we mix factions or what.
Right.
I just thought, oh, what a cool idea for an event. So anyway, I thought that was
and if
pretty
I
cool.
take, for example, if I take Grey Knights in the team games, I might take the Land Raiders because
in your solo game,
leaning into even in the team game, because it's 1,000 points and there's no force work.
Right. Correct.
So then I could be the armor for the other.
Yes, absolutely.
teammate.
Absolutely. But in your solo game, you could be rocking 2 Land Raiders,
right?
And because you're
And all
playing
the
2,000
stuff,
points, but you're fighting off 2 opponents,
right? Which could be.
I think it's actually probably easier because you're not having to confer with the other person.
It'll be faster on your side. Yeah,
on your side it would be faster.
Conferring.
It'll
be interesting to see how
I'm curious how it all played out.
The 2 players.
I
I
would predict it takes longer for them to take their turns.
Yeah, but as opposed to a 2-on-2.
Yeah,
I bet it's a lot faster than a 2-on-2.
Oh, I bet you. I guarantee it. Yeah, I guarantee it. Yeah. But it was just a cool idea for a tournament. I thought, oh, what a fun idea.
That's interesting. And whoever came up with that's thinking
really
outside
clever.
the box.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll close out the show. All right, and we're back to close out the show. So, I think, again, I think we summarized kind of Pariah Nexus at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I am very eager to play more Crusade. Like, I think it's a very interesting way to play. I do get tired of just playing rock up to the table, roll this random mission. I mean, I like the cards for the variety they provide.
Right.
But
as opposed to the 3 that we used to have
for 5 missions or whatever it was. Yeah. There was, my favorite saying was when you did the table layout was there's long ways,
short ways, and then
there's normal, there's diagonal, and there's you want to roll again.
What was the it was weird.
Yeah, there was like a round, I don't remember.
Yeah,
anyway. So yeah, I think that summarizes it pretty good. Please give it a chance. Like seriously, give it a chance. I think and you don't, and honestly, you don't even need to get Pariah Nexus to give it a chance. You probably got the Leviathan stuff. If you haven't given Crusade a try, find a friend that you're playing. Especially if you're one of those people that like, I play with the same 2 or 3 people all the time, you guys should give it a try.
Give it a try.
Or gals or whoever.
The other thing I would say is if you play Necrons,
you got to be.
You definitely got to give it a try.
Yeah. When we did that game, that big game from Fall of Orpheus and stuff like that was super fun. I think we could recreate something very interesting here.
Yeah, so absolutely.
All right. We have reviews on iTunes we appreciate. We have Facebook. We have Patreon. We have a Discord server.
YouTube.
We're holding off on YouTube till Josh comes back. Josh will be back. A lot of people came up to me at Nova, asked if Josh was okay. Josh is fine.
Yes.
He's fine.
He's just busy.
Everything's fine. He's just busy. He's got a lot of contract stuff going on with photography and all that. Well, he's been laid off, and so he's looking for a job, but at the same time he's picked up a bunch of contracts, freelance stuff to do. That's one of the great things, man. I should have been a photographer. He hates shooting weddings, but I mean, at least you always have something you can just be like, boom, I can take up
takes an artistic.
He has a bunch of contacts in the business. He's like a sports photographer. So like doing mountain biking and all that junk. Living the life. What a stud. People also asked, hey, is Justin going to come back? Are we going to do more author interviews?
When he starts wearing sleeves.
No, certainly before that. I was actually supposed to play a game with Justin and I begged off of the game. I was getting ready to go to Nova. I just ran out of time. The reality is, Justin also went through a bunch of life changes and he's just now looking to get back into 40K. And so once he's back into 40K and playing, I definitely want him on. But I kind of, if you're guesting on the show, it means you're playing. I mean, we can't just talk about other people,
Other people playing?
Yeah, other people playing. Like I want some first person perspective and stuff. I've got some great guest hosts coming up.
I will say that there have been some comments about, can you just put up the audio onto YouTube? So because people like to listen to it through there.
Yeah. Okay. Let me figure out if I can do that, or I can provide it to Josh and Josh can just upload it for me
with the
logo or something. Yeah. I missed the YouTube stuff. Honestly, we were really enjoying doing it, but Josh is really the one that's skilled in how we were doing that. Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, leave us a review on iTunes. I'm glad you brought that to my attention though, Aaron. Thanks. I will look at how we can get that stuff up on YouTube. Yeah. You got anything else you want to add?
No, I think that did it.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Aaron.
We're coming to you from the Astronomicon where
Necrons still reign supreme.
And where the nightmarish conclusion to the Torrentian campaign, repeated in myriad forms across the Nephilim subsector, apocalyptic reprisal followed unleashed atrocity as martial scientists and engineers of destruction on both sides sought to... I can't read any more of this. All right.
You're killing me.
We'll see you next time.
This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.